Oh dear. Okay, hi, this is Stephen, and today we are going to crochet. We're going to make this interlocking filet crochet Clover Patch. And the pattern is free. You can download the pattern probably wherever you're seeing this video, or go to interlockingpatches.com/free. And that's where whatever free patterns I have available at the moment will be. So let's not think about this too much. I'll use this as an opportunity to introduce interlocking crochet as a technique and as an opportunity to introduce my particular style of patterns and notation. So what are we going to need for this? We're going to need 2 colors of yarn, and I recommend using just any sort of medium weight yarn that you have lying around and feel comfortable using. This is just dish rag yarn, medium weight cotton yarn. I think the brand is probably Loops and Threads, the Michaels House brand. What we just want is any 2 colors that have a reasonably high contrast between them. So in the pattern it will be black and green. I'm going to use a light green and a dark green just because I think it shows up a little bit better on camera. As for hook size, this technique can be done with any yarn, any crochet thread, and the hook that the yarn manufacturer recommends, or a hook about a third smaller, give or take. So the recommended hook size for this yarn is a 5mm hook, and that's what I'll go ahead and use today, and that's what I recommend using when you're getting started, when you're just learning the technique. Normally with this yarn I would use a 3.75mm, but 5mm hook, medium weight thread. If you've got something like that, you should be golden. These 2 colors we are going to call our dark color, color A. A is our outline color, and we'll call our light color, color B. B is our background color, so B for background if you need help remembering that. We're going to start with color A, and again, our 5mm hook. Now there is a lot of information in my patterns. Let's not worry about it too much. Let's just go ahead and get started. The pattern, the diagram and the notation should appear on screen as you're watching this, and yeah, we'll just sort of explain as things go along. So we go to this first page of the pattern that you'll see has an overview, so that shows you everything that we're going to make, and that includes every stitch in the final piece and the final motif, and it also includes some little mock-ups of what the motif would look like with different border options and with the colors inverted. Let's not worry about that now. Let's just go straight to the first row of the pattern itself. Start with FA. FA is foundation A, so it's just a foundation chain. Make a slip knot to start, and we are told chain 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 14, 15, 16, 17. Out of my way. Now, this first row is very, very simple. If you've ever done filet crochet, we're just making a single row of filet crochet. The way I'm asking you to do it is to work into the back bumps of your foundation chain. So we've made our foundation chain. This is the front of our stitches, the front of our chain stitches rather. So back loop, front loop. If we turn the chain towards us, we get this row, this long row of sort of marching ants looking little stitches, and those are our back bumps. It can be a little bit tricky to find the first back bump, but that's it right here, right up next to the hook. And we're going to find the 6th one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Insert the hook into that 6th back bump, draw up a loop, and double crochet. So hopefully you didn't forget about yarning over, as I did. Chain 1, skip 1 back bump, double crochet in the next chain. In the pattern, it'll just say DC5. Something you just have to know, you have to learn for these patterns, is that the notation does not include these chain 1 stitches that create the gaps. But if you look at the diagram, that is pictured there. So what is the pattern? Double crochet, chain 1, skip 1 back bump, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, and on, all the way down the line. We're going to do that a total of 5 times. We've done it 3 times. Chain 1, skip 1 back bump, double crochet in the back bump after. That's 4. Chain 1, yarn over, skip 1 back bump, double crochet in the back bump that follows. Okay. Not too bad. Chain 1. Pretty much always going to chain 1 after one of these double crochet stitches. Okay, so let's just look at what we have here. We've got a row of what we would call filet crochet mesh started, and for the last square, we're just going to slip stitch into the end of our chain. So we chained 1 after our last double crochet, and now we're just going to go into the last chain stitch, the last back bump, the 3rd back bump, and slip stitch. That's the end of our row, and don't worry that it looks a little bit ugly. That'll all get cleaned up at the end. When we finish the end of any row, we are going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And once we have chained 3, just pull your loop open so that your chain doesn't come undone. And what we have here is a row of filet crochet mesh with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, 6 squares. In my patterns, I call these MSPs or mesh spaces. But this is we've now finished row 1A, color A, row 1. Put it down, just put it down. Pick up your color B color, your light color. And we're going to start very similarly. If we look at FB, foundation B in our pattern, it tells us to chain 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, no, 15. Now, let's look at row 1B. It says T4. What does T mean? T means double crochet through both meshes. How do we do that? Well, much the same way. We start by yarning over just to make a double crochet. We're going to turn to our back and find our back bumps. We're going to find our 6th back bump. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to insert the hook into that back bump. But before we make the double crochet, we're going to pick up row 1A. Now make sure that it is facing upright, so the front is facing you and the top is on top. So basically your chain 3 should be here at the end of the row on top where you left it. So we have yarned over, we have inserted our hook into the 6th back bump. Now we are also going to insert our hook into the 2nd, not the 1st, but the 2nd row 1A MSP or mesh space. And so now, with the hook going through both colors, through the back bump and through the mesh space, you're going to draw up a loop and double crochet. Chain 1, because we always do that after an MST or mesh stitch. And let me just double check that I was in the right loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That does look okay. So now we have a double crochet through both meshes, or a T-stitch. We've chained 1. I'm going to skip a back bump in our FB chain, or color B chain, insert the hook, and now find the 3rd color 1A MSP. Now when I say the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd, I mean the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd from the beginning. So if you're left-handed, it's going to be you're starting in the 2nd MSP from the left. If you're right-handed, you're starting in the 2nd MSP from the right. And so we're basically just making these double crochet through stitches all the way down the line, creating 2 rows of filet crochet mesh that are, in fact, attached. So chain 1, skip 1, back bump, insert through the next MSP. How many times? We're doing this 4 times, so that's number 3. Chain 1, yarn over, skip a back bump, go into the next back bump, go into the next mesh space, and double crochet through both meshes, chain 1. Now, we've done that 1, 2, 3, 4. That is 4 double crochet stitches through both meshes with a chain stitch between them to create the gaps. Now to finish this row, we do not need to yarn over, we just need to find our last back bump, which will be the 3rd back bump. We've got 3 chains remaining, and just slip stitch on the front through that back bump, or into that back bump rather. So this last stitch will not be attached, it'll be kind of flopping around on the edges like this, and it'll look really goofy, but I have to promise you, it'll look better after a row or 2. We've reached the end of the row, so that means we can chain 1, 2, 3. Every time you finish a row and chain 3, the next thing you're going to do is go back to the other color. So we're going to pick up color A once again to start row 2A. 2A is worked on the back, with the back facing you. This is really important, and this is something you'll have to figure out in order to successfully complete these patterns. This is the front of the work, this is the back. The diagrams always show the front of the work because that's going to be more useful to you. The back looks like nothing in particular. So in this row, 2A begins B2. B means double crochet on back. The back is facing me, so to make that B stitch, I'm just going to insert into the top of the first MST, the first of these vertical double crochet stitches. And I'm just going to double crochet in it without going through the other mesh in any way. I'm not going behind it, I'm not going through it, I'm really not engaging with it. I'm just making a double crochet here on the back of the work, which, in this case, is facing me. I've done that twice. That's B2, chain 1, as you always chain 1. Now the next stitch is an F. So that means double crochet on the front of the work. Again, the back is facing us, so how are we going to make a double crochet up here? Well, it's a little bit of a maneuver. What you're doing, I mean, however it makes sense to think about it is fine, but how I like to think about it is I'm going back through the color A mesh, picking up my current stitch, and making a double crochet. So once again, I'm not going through the green mesh, but I had to kind of maneuver the hook. I had to sort of maneuver this stitch from the back to the front. Let's do that again. So double crochet on back, chain 1. I'm just going to yarn over. If it helps, you can just turn it over to the front and just pick up that same stitch on the front. And double crochet. Chain 1, and it says B2. So the next stitch is going to be a double crochet on the back. Chain 1, double crochet here on the back. The last stitch in this row is a DC. We're going to chain 1 like we always do, and then just double crochet, skip. What we have here at the end is the tail end of our foundation chain. So we're going to skip this first chain and double crochet under both loops of the next chain, which will form our corner. Now, working into these turning chains is a bit of a skill. It's not my favorite thing to do. It's not anyone's favorite thing to do, I don't think. But you just have to get used to it. So we finished the row, so we can chain 3 and let this go. Pick up color A, and this just says T5. So instead of working on the back, we're going to need to go through both, like we did on the front, but just moving in the opposite direction. That was our T1. Double crochet through both meshes and chain 1. That was T2. Double crochet through both meshes, chain 1. That's T3. Double crochet through both meshes, chain 1. We're going to do it one more time, and things get a little bit hairy at the edges. You just got to think about what you're doing. Yarn over. I gotta get through both somehow, so I'm going to go through my color A mesh, and I'm going to skip one of these turning chains and go under both loops of the chain that follows, and now draw up a loop while my hook is still through both meshes, and double crochet and chain 3. Pull that loop big. Pick up color A. If I haven't mentioned already, I tend to redo my chain stitches when I start just to make sure that nothing has gotten mangled. And now we are ready to start color 3. Something I forgot to mention, and indeed may have been a problem for you in the last row, when you're working with color A in my patterns, you can see color B here, we've got this chain 3. We could carry that on the front here, or we could carry it on the back, behind. In 90% of cases, we are going to be carrying that on the front. And in fact, if it doesn't say anything about whether to carry it on the front or the back, you're carrying it on the front. And that's the front of the work. So here we are looking at the front of the work, if you can believe it. And color B is here to the front, closer to the front than color A is. And that is where you want to make sure it is when you make the first stitch in the row. First stitch is a BN. What is a BN? Well, we've done a B. We know that a B is a double crochet stitch on the back, and that's going to go here in the first of our MSTs, or mesh stitches. So we're going to start a double crochet on the back, and then we're going to work an N. An N is a diagonal, and a diagonal is made with a triple crochet. And that triple crochet is going to be worked on the front. So a double crochet on back, B, triple crochet on front in N, or the next MST. So where the B, where the double crochet on back is going, that's our what I would call our current stitch. And then the triple crochet, the diagonal, the N, goes into the next MST. Let's just do it. So yarn over, BN is the stitch. So yarn over to start the B. Start a double crochet on the back. I whiffed something there, I apologize. Yarn over, go into our current stitch, start a double crochet. So I've done the first half of the double crochet. There are 2 loops remaining on the hook. Yarn over twice to start a triple crochet and work that into the next MST on the front. Draw through 2 loops, draw through 2 loops, and then with 3 loops on the hook, yarn over one more time and draw through all 3. So what we have there is a double crochet on back worked together with a triple crochet in next, BN. Chain 1. So after these diagonals, you're still going to chain 1, just like after all your other stitches. The next stitch in our notation is a B, so just a regular old double crochet on back, nothing fancy, chain 1. Now, okay, this kind of escalates quickly in this pattern, I apologize. Now we have a stitch called a PFN. So P stands for previous. So if this was a diagonal in next, it goes this way. Our diagonal in previous is going to go in the opposite direction. P, F, F is a double crochet on front, N, N is a triple crochet in next. So it's 3 stitches worked together, a P, a diagonal P, a double crochet F, and a triple crochet diagonal in N. Let's just do it. So P is the start, so it's a diagonal, so we need to yarn over twice to start a triple crochet. P is previous, so that is the MST where we just made the last stitch, not our current one, the one before it. Draw through 2 loops twice to start a triple crochet, and before you finish the triple crochet, yarn over again to start the double crochet. The double crochet is on front, so to make sure we're on front, I'm inserting my hook and then just pulling the current stitch forward so that I'm not going through the other mesh at all. Do the first half of a double crochet. There are now 3 loops on the hook, and that's good. Yarn over twice to start the last triple crochet, and that's going into the next stitch on the front. So pulling that next stitch front, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now, with 4 loops remaining on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. Chain 1, because you always chain 1. Now, this looks a little, again, it looks a little goggly, but subsequent rows are going to pull everything into place and it'll look much nicer. Just be content in the fact that you just worked 3 stitches together, diagonal, a double crochet, and another diagonal. Now, picking up, the next stitch is just another B. So in the same stitch, in our current stitch, which already has a diagonal in it, we're going to work a double crochet on back, chain 1, then PB. So yarn over twice to start a triple crochet in previous. So previous is just the stitch where we just were. Start a triple crochet, work the first 2 parts of it, and now yarn over once to create the B, the double crochet on back, which will go into this stitch, which doesn't have any stitches in it yet. Work those 2 stitches together. Okay. Chain 1, and the last stitch is almost always a DC, because it's an MST, but here hanging out past the edge of the color B mesh. So that's that. We've reached the end of the row, so we can chain 1, 2, 3, pull our loop big, and pick up color B. If you're noticing, I always turn the work back to whatever side was facing when I made my chain 3, my turning chain, and I just redo it there. So everything is perfect, everything is loose, you don't want these turning chain 3s to be too tight. And then I am turning the work clockwise for left-handers, counterclockwise for right-handers. Okay, 3B is where we are now. Here we have yet another new stitch. This is FF3, and it wants us to make 2 of them. So an FF just stands for fill stitches. These are double crochets worked on the front without chain spaces between them. So where you would normally chain and skip a space, you are going to double crochet in that space without chaining between. So instead of going double crochet in this MST, chain 1, double crochet in this next MST, we're going to double crochet in the chain space, and then double crochet a 3rd time in the second MST. Sorry. So let's just go ahead and do that. This is going to introduce, before I get too far into it, this is going to introduce another problem, which is how to work around these diagonal stitches on the front. This is another just skill involved in the technique that will seem really bewildering at first, but after a while becomes old hat. So I need to make FF3, so 3 double crochet stitches on the front, here, here, and here. So to do this, the diagonals are always going to remain on top. So to make my first stitch, I have to kind of work around that diagonal. And it may take you a couple tries to get it, to get just your color B MST without accidentally snagging any part of this diagonal, but it is possible. Just know that it's possible and keep working at it until you get it. Now we're at our chain space. You could do any number of things here. The easiest would be to just double crochet into the space itself. I don't prefer that. I find it looks less even, and like enough less even that it's worth the extra effort of actually working into the chain stitch. So here, let's just reveal the chain stitch. There it is. You can see the teardrop shape. I want to go under this front and this back loop. Now, in this case, I can kind of see them, and I could just sort of force my hook through there. You may not know that if the back bump, if this third loop, is that visible on camera? If this third loop is visible to you, you can use the hook and kind of go backwards through it, and that will snag your front and back loops in a way that tends to be a bit easier. Anyway, however you do it, just go ahead and double crochet in that chain space, and then make your third double crochet, your third FF stitch, FF3, in the next MST, being careful, again, not to go over this diagonal stitch. Chain 1. So at the end of every group of FF3s, you chain 1, just not between them. And we're going to do that again. Where? Look, this is the next MST, this is the next color B vertical, so I'm going to go behind this diagonal, which is very unhelpfully in the way, work into both loops of that MST, draw it to the front, and work my double crochet. Do not chain between FF stitches. I'm just going to, by any means necessary, get into both loops of this chain 1. It's not cooperating. They often don't. And double crochet. That's FF2. Now let's do FF3 in the next MST. This is also going behind the diagonal, but it's a little clearer to see. Okay, so the last stitch is a T. So we're going to end chain 1 after our last fill stitch, find our second turning chain 3, get under both loops, however we need to do it, and then also, it's a T stitch, so we also want to go through the last mesh space and double crochet through both meshes. And I like using T stitches here on the edge, just to keep everything nice and tight and together. So that has gotten us through, well, kind of everything. We're going to finish it up. This is still less than halfway through, obviously. But you've now used all of the stitches that are involved in this pattern. At this point, if you haven't already done so, we can just go ahead and pull this stupid tail through to the back. And that'll help it to look nice, a little bit nicer. But what's really going to help it to look nice will be additional rows. So let's get back to the pattern and keep it up.